What is up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Kharis Kurian, here with Mayor Brooke Huckaby Wilson of Arabi, Georgia.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Should be here on our podcast today, and let's get started. Okay, so for people hearing your story for the first time, who is Brooke Huckaby Wilson? Where you're from, and what life in Arabi is like, and what people may not like expect about you.
So I have lived in Crisp County, which there's two cities in Crisp County. It's Cordele and Arabi, and I've lived here my entire life. I was born in the hospital about 10 minutes down the road, and
Hmm.
it's obviously a really agricultural community. I come from like a sixth generation farming family. So I've sort of always been immersed in, I guess you could say, the culture of the area as far as the agriculture side of it goes. Um, and now it kind of made its way into the political side of it, but I sort of thought they're intertwined, at least for me, they are. And something that somebody or people may not expect about me is that as much as I care about my political career and, advancing that and everything, I'm also married. As you said, my last name's Huckabee Wilson now, and I got married after I got elected. So my focus is not only on advancing myself politically, but it's also on my home and my husband and our family as well. And I think that's something that a lot of maybe people wouldn't see looking at me as especially a young female politician is I sort of try to give just as much effort to both sides of it as I do everything else.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Just being able to what's it called give effort for being a, politician and also your family. I think is really important to have that balance, that work life balance for sure.
It does because I mean, when I get home at the end of the day, like that's my reset. Seeing my husband, seeing our
Yeah,
puppies, and it's a great way to end the day.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you've kind of so you definitely like talked about this a lot. But I would love to hear more about outside of being mayor, like what does everyday life actually look for you? So like agriculture, hobbies, routine, family life. You talked about your husband and your puppies, like more of that.
So, I mean, I really never know what the day will bring. Especially being in a smaller town, I sort of wear multiple hats. So, I could get a call
Yeah.
and we could have a water line busted. So, I may be running down there to try to get with my maintenance crew, figure out how long it's going to be out. Um, Sometimes I feel like a personal therapist for some of my citizens, which isn't a bad thing. I'm glad that they feel like they can call me and talk about things and just trying to balance, like I said, public service and like I said, public service truly is public service. So I have to have another
Yeah.
job besides that. And
Yeah.
obviously that's the more agricultural side of it. And me and my husband deal with honeybees. So that keeps me pretty busy. And as far as agriculture goes, I know that most people know, but honeybees are pretty pivotal to agricultural production and everything. And it's it's a lot. Sometimes I tell
Oh
people I feel
yeah, for
like
sure.
chicken with my head cut off.
Yeah. So you talked about your experience in like like a small town. Yeah, it's crazy. Like you're kind of like running multiple hats because like there's like not many people.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Well, and since I've became mayor, we used to contract with our county sheriff's department to provide, public safety to our city. And we actually started a police department whenever I got elected. So now, trying to manage that and letting everybody know we're not just here to write tickets. We care about the community policing aspect of it and just really even seeing like the little changes that have been made in my 2.5 years, it's exciting to see where the future will go with it all.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So growing up in a small Georgia town, what values or experiences have shaped the person you become? Like what values or experience like shaped the person you are today? So like family, faith, farming culture, mentors, community. Like what like has like shaped you?
I definitely say my faith is a big part of it. I've grown
Oh
up
yeah,
every
for sure.
day being a pastor. So just really rooting myself in my faith and my community is sort of the mentality I've taken with all of this. It's just when you grow up in a smaller area, you sort of look at everybody as family anyways. And even more so when you're in a position of public service, you really have to look out for everybody. But when you've grown up caring about others your entire life, it's not that hard to transition into this role because it's putting others above yourself. And that's something that I believe we all see Jesus doing. So definitely my faith has been part of that. And then also, like I said, just always being involved in the community. It was almost more, it would have been stranger for me not to care than it is for me to care. It's sort of just like second nature.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely relate to the faith aspect. And like, I'm not trying to be preachy. This is nonpartisan or like it's not I'm not trying to infringe any views, but I also, share a similar Christian faith background. I definitely believe in the importance of, serving others and, because that's what Jesus did. I think it's really important, to serve others in the community, and I definitely really love how you do that. And I think it's really important, whether you're a Christian or not. I believe it's important, have that background of like,
I feel
Paul,
like,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. And putting others above yourself it's not always the easiest decision to make, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's a lot more gratifying than making it all about self.
yeah, for sure. Like that's what like being holding office I believe it's about. It's like being able to put yourself out to like serve other people, not just yourself. Because government's all about the consent of the people to govern.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. So you talked about your faith, leadership and public service. So like, when did leadership or public service first start interesting you, and what was there a specific moment when it clicked?
So I've really a little backstory on me. I grew up with three older sisters, and they were 17, 16, and 11 when I was born. So I grew up with the mentality I was six going on 16. So I'd say that I definitely started looking at politics and caring about it at an early age. I mean, I remember when I was seven, paying attention to the first presidential election that really stuck with me. And at that moment, I was like, I think I'm going to do that one day. And then the older I got, the more things changed in the world, the more I realized that I feel like we need people with similar values in positions representing us more so than we need just a figure sitting with a title not representing us. And I think there's a large majority, whether it's on a local, state, or national level, that feel like they're not correctly represented. And that's sort of what drove me to even run for a local position because you can't really complain about something unless you're willing to help change that something that you're complaining about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's really, really important because, like, you're talking about, like, like we said about, you have to, like, actually, like, put in the work. If you're complaining about something, that's not, like, that's not going to do anything. I think it's really important, to, like, really put in the work and to actually, like, try to, like, do something that would actually change things rather than just sitting around and complaining.
Right. We love to come up with issues, but not solutions. And I feel like if
Yeah, for
we put our
sure.
energy into the solution side of it, then maybe we would have less time to sit around and complain.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, you became mayor at a very young age. Yeah. So, wait. How old were you when you became a mayor?
So I was 20 when I got elected, and I was 20 for 2 months of my term. I got sworn in January, and I turned 21 in March. So
Whoa.
I was 20. I tell everybody
Yeah.
now that I'm 2.5 years in, I feel very seasoned at this point.
Yeah. So, so yeah, you became mayor at a very young age. So, like, what made you decide? I actually want to do this. You talked about how you talked about how you were six going on 16, and like you were really engaged at like a younger age. But like, what specifically made you like want to like actually do this at like a young age rather than like maybe waiting a little longer for like a higher office? What made you like became mayor like at such a young age right now?
Well, I feel like to answer your question of the higher office, I feel like if you don't start at home, then you shouldn't try to go beyond that because it all at the end of the day it all starts at home and then you can kind of move your way up. And then secondly, I to be honest with you, I've been asked this question so many times, and in my mind, my age didn't even come into play with it. It was just, I grew up being told, if you want to do something, just work for it and do it and see what happens. And I decided I'm gonna go sign up. I'm gonna run for mayor. I mean, it was a to be honest, I think I decided on a Monday and I went up there on a Thursday and I was like, you know what? Like I'm gonna quit talking about wanting our town to grow. I'm gonna quit talking about being mad that my friends want to graduate and leave and not come back because there's nothing here. And I'm just gonna go try to be part of that change. So I signed up
Yeah.
and I mean I'm not kidding. I did not think about my age for a split second. And then I won, and then lo and behold, I'm getting all these calls, and it's like, oh, you're the youngest female mayor in the United States. And I was like, really? Like, that's cool. But it didn't come into play for me. It was just something that I decided I was like, I want to start making a difference. And I just did it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Like, you could have just yeah, like I think it's cool that like you like chose to like stay in your hometown and like actually like to try to like make stuff work there. Like instead of like like leaving away. Like I think it's really really noble and like inspiring to hear that because like I think it's because like I think it's really important. Like going back to the whole like service thing. I think it's really important. If you see things happening, like I think it's important to like actually do something about it and not just sit there. So I think it's really really good.
Well, and in Georgia, you see all of these metro areas that are sort of expanding and people are just piling in,
Yeah,
living there. And then you see the rural areas like, anything below Macon and the populations of 3,000 or less, and they're just dwindling down to the point that they're consolidating with the county and they just at that point don't really exist anymore. And I don't feel like I don't feel like that's the solution that has to be taken with
yeah, for sure.
what they've been doing. And, if we don't, especially our generation, like I believe we're going to be the ones to make that change and to sort of kick everybody into gear.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely important. People, especially in our generation, to like really lock in and to like actually, get like make change happen.
And to start caring about, and again, it goes back to it, but to start caring about something other than ourselves, because I feel like we have a really bad habit. And I am going to talk about our generation. We have a very bad habit of being caught up in our phone or in our social media to the point that
Oh,
we
for
don't
sure.
know what's going on around us. And, I get so sick of hearing from people my age, well, like, no, I didn't go vote. I didn't know who to vote for. Well, you're on your phone so much. Why don't you get on Google that you use for everything else and find out
Exactly. Yeah.
about where you're voting? I mean, it's not that difficult, and it's just the lack of effort. And I've even, gone as far as to call it laziness on our side to not be involved in these things because we're the ones that's gonna, suffer the repercussions of not getting out and voting now. In 10 years, we're going to be dealing with the consequences of not being willing to make a decision.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think it's honestly, alarming that people like just don't there's like a increasing amount of apathy in like, people our age, like they're not wanting to like vote or like really care about, the issue. I'm not saying like, you gotta be like a
You
D1
don't have
politics nerd,
to care
but
one
like
way or the other, but just believe in something and fight for it.
yeah,
It's
for sure.
don't just sit there and not do anything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I think this kind of gets into another question I was gonna ask. So like a lot of people, our age, they may think, politics is like, boring or irrelevant. So like why should people, actually care about it like today?
Well, because politics and it's sort of like agriculture, it affects you from the gas pump to the grocery store. You want to sit here and talk about the economy being bad or prices being high on things. Well, maybe if you get involved in electing your representatives, electing our local, state, national representatives, then maybe things would change to our benefit or change how you want them to change. But it affects our everyday lives in every minute way possible. And it's just if you don't care, then you don't have a right to complain.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. If you don't care, you don't have a right to complain. Because like, I think it's really, yeah, I think that's really good. Because like, I think it's really important. Because like, we're given rights and other people in other countries may not have, and I think
Exactly.
yeah,
And then we want to complain about, certain things and not do anything about it.
yeah, exactly. It's like. it's like insanity. Like, people think that, just complaining about it is like, change things, but like it really won't.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So going off of what you talking about, agriculture, that's what is you're mainly, about agriculture and all that. So agriculture has, been a major part of your life and an interest. And why does it matter to so much to you personally? And like, I guess a lot of people our age may also like, find something like agriculture boring or irrelevant, and like because like, it's because like, some people it can be kind of boring, so like why should young people actually care about it today?
So a lot of people I think have the opinion, well, like it's okay what happens to the farmers because we'll just go to the grocery store and get our food. And that's something that I've even heard gubernatorial candidates say in the race that we're having right now in the state of Georgia. And to me, that is the most ignorant mindset that you could ever have. Because if we don't care about our farmers, they're eventually going to stop caring about us. And when farmers stop caring, then supplies go down for everything. I mean, your toilet paper, your gasoline, your clothes, everything
Yeah.
comes from a farmer. And it's especially growing up in the community, I have seen farmers barely scrape by year after year and they keep doing it because if they stop, then who's going to do it? Our
Yeah.
generation's going to pick it up. Our generation doesn't want to struggle for anything. They could, to be honest with you, I'm scared to see what farming turns into in the next 25 years just due to the lack of participation from our generation because our parents are not going to be around forever. Our grandparents aren't going to be around forever. And then do we just turn into Korea and not have food in our grocery stores?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's definitely, I haven't thought of, potentially, having a famine, that would honestly be, really, really, crazy if we had that, like,
Farming is
yeah.
so difficult. I mean, farmers are relying on God and the elements that He allows to, affect their crops. So if we have a lot of rain one year, they might have had a great crop, but all of their produce is going to be ruined because it's waterlogged. Or we could have straight line winds and it could rip all the vines out of the ground, and they could have spent, $500,000 on their crop that year and lose everything in a split second. And
Yeah.
it's really scary. And that's again why I believe we need to push for legislation that supports our farmers and especially keeps other countries out of our trade, which allows our products to, sell for more and our farmers to actually be able to survive.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I think it's definitely, I think it's definitely, important, for, people to start caring. And like, what would you say, like, so, there's a problem, like farming, becoming, I guess, like people that are like not caring about it. Like, what would you do? What do you, like, I guess, want to do to, like, I guess take action and to like and to like, make sure that, like farming it doesn't become irrelevant in the next like 20 years.
Well, so my major was ag technology management, which is essentially a ag engineering role, which is bringing
Hmm.
AI and all that sort of stuff into farm and equipment. In my opinion, the best thing that we could do for farming is to eradicate all of the use of AI and robotic things. Like, don't get me wrong, some of the stuff it does help. I know that a tractor, tractors now have GPS systems in them. You can set the row you're on, it'll drive itself. I can
Hmm.
understand how that would be helpful. But the more technology that we allow into agriculture, I believe the more it's going to be corrupted. And there's something so beautiful about growing something from nothing. And I feel like the more that you push it down the AI technology
Hmm.
loophole, the more you're going to lose. That's just how
Yeah.
I feel. So I think the way to keep it relevant is to keep it how it has been for the last 250 years, at least in the United States, and just keep it simple and keep growing and keep good products coming forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely, it's kind of the saying, like, uh, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I think you can get to a point where you break it trying to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, innovation, has its cost.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, going off of, like I guess this apathy, especially towards like agriculture and farming, what do you think, people misunderstand the most about rural communities and small town America?
I think that they may you kind of looking at it from the outside looking in, you just see it as like, oh, well, in my town especially, we have a Dollar General, a couple gas stations, a couple liquor stores. But besides that, it's all agricultural industry. And I was actually having this conversation with somebody yesterday, and it's if you're in the ag world, you know exactly where Arabi, Georgia is because the agricultural industry that's there is pivotal for the entire state, or at least the south half,
Yeah,
whether it's chemical sales, distribution centers, especially transport, like trucking companies. I mean, that's what makes the world go round, especially with agriculture, because if you can't get your fertilizer, then your crop's not going to grow. If you can't get your produce transported somewhere, you're not going to make any money for it. So it takes, what's the word? It takes a village, but I guess in this sense, it's an agricultural type village. And I think
yeah,
people don't see how tight knit of a community it really is. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some days where you hate each other, but when something goes wrong, everybody comes together. And, I've even seen farmers get hurt and other farmers all band together to come harvest their crop for them. And it's just, you don't see that in larger areas, and it's just that true sense of community that I don't think is worth losing for anything in the world.
yeah, for sure. I think I agree. It's really, really like, yeah, community is definitely very, very important. Yeah. So, a lot of people, younger people, you talked about this a little bit, dream about, leaving small towns for bigger cities. I know you talked about that with like, your friends, like they graduated, they like, moved out. So like, what would you say that to someone who thinks there's nothing meaningful left in places like Arabi?
Well, it's kind of like the same thing I said for the other question. It's just if you think there's nothing meaningful, then come back and make something meaningful. Invest yourself, immerse yourself into it, and see, what can come from it. I mean, just it's not going to be easy, but if you run off to somewhere else that does have all these things, I promise at a point you'll be miserable there too. Because I mean, I've had friends that have moved off and been gone and had a great time, and they're like, "Oh, I want to come back home." I'm like, "Yeah, I bet you do, but imagine what you could have done if you would have stayed home."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, were these people that like, like, you, like grew up with?
Yeah, definitely. It's people that I grew up with, some of my best friends, and I mean, they you appreciate the familiarity once you, I guess, go away from it for a while. And then you come home and you're like, oh, wow, this is home. Like, this is nice. And don't get me wrong. I mean, it is irritating when you are in smaller areas where you don't have very much to offer as far as, I guess, entertainment and that kind of stuff goes. But again, the really great part about where we're at in Georgia, especially, they kind of call us the gateway to the South. So, I mean, you can get to Valdosta, which is close to the Florida line in an hour from where we're at. You can get to Macon in an hour. You can get to Atlanta in 2 hours. So it's really,
Yeah.
you have the ability to go to the places that you want to go to, but still come back to, home base at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live in any more populated area than I already do. I think it would drive me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, like I think it reminds me of, what I heard about, yeah, like you don't truly appreciate what you have until it's gone.
Right. You think
And
the
I
grass
think,
is
yeah,
greener on the other side, but sometimes that grass is artificial.
yeah, yeah, for sure, yeah. So yeah, yeah, I definitely think it's important, for yeah, I guess you really, like appreciate what you have in the moment because like it's not gonna be like, 'cause, like sometimes you won't miss it until you like actually like leave it.
Right, right.
Yeah. So we definitely talked about this a lot, but like, do you think like younger generations are like becoming too disconnected from like where their food resources and everyday necessities actually come from? And we talked about this about how like people like don't really care about like the farming and like they don't really like appreciate like where it comes from and the work. But like, I guess could you like talk about that more?
So I definitely think it goes back to, like you said, what we talked about, but people just sort of have their head in the sand. And it's not even just our generation. I mean, I've seen people my sister's age, in their late 30s, early 40s, and like they're just really ignorant. And you can't argue with ignorance, but the only way to combat it is just with information.
Yeah,
And but if people I sort of look at it as them having blinders on, like you can only show people what they want to see. And in the self-obsessed world that we live in, people
for
only
sure.
me, and don't really worry about problems until they're right in front of their face. And
Yeah,
it's like there's no foresight with anything anymore. It's just in the moment, whatever you're absorbed in, and we'll move on to the next thing when it matters. And I think that that's disappointing on our part, I believe, as a generation.
yeah. I think yeah, I would definitely agree. It is kind of disappointing that people aren't are like like not really like caring about like the stuff around them. I think it is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So kind
And it's
of
not
shifting gear. Yeah.
with I'm gonna like go back on that. It's not even just with agriculture, it's just caring about others as well. I see so many, I mean, I just say we need to get out of social media, but back to it, I see so many videos where people our age, I mean, people will come up to them and not necessarily asking for money. It's just situations where like, hey, I need help, like help me. And people our age will just kind of turn around and I mean they just look like idiots and just walk away. And if we really keep going in that direction, I am terrified to see the world that we live in the next 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. I really hope that the next 10 years, people are actually gonna lock in and realize that, we're getting older and it's gonna be us leading, the world. Like in like 100 years from now, like we're gonna be like the oldest generation and it's like really important for us to really lock in and actually do stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. So kind of shifting gears to your like leadership and I guess you rising to being mayor it's like what to be like a young woman leading a community and have people ever underestimated you because of your age.
I would say maybe whenever I was initially running, there were a couple people that had a few things to say about my age, but I started working for my dad when I was 6, so I sort of got a taste of the real world
Hmm.
very early on. And my thing when I was running was just not to really listen to the negativity and just focus on proving them wrong if I, did get elected. And that's what I've done from day one is just worked to the absolute best of my ability to improve the city, the citizens' quality of life. I mean, everything just the little things truly matter in everything, but especially in politics. And I've found that being transparent and sort of letting people know why decisions are being made the way that they are, it's it, it's a good avenue to take being in leadership because then people don't feel like you're on a power trip. They feel like you're working together, which is really what you should be doing if you're in
Hmm.
any form of leadership is working with the people that surround you.
Yeah, I think it's really important it's working with other people because it's really like a collective effort to serve the people.
It is for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so another thing I would ask is do you think do you think younger leaders see communities and I guess leadership differently than other generations do?
I don't feel like younger generations see communities or see leadership at all. Honestly, I don't think that they think about it. I'd be willing to bet if you ask most people our age, they would have no idea what a city council or a city commission or anything like that really is. I don't think that we're involved enough to this point to have any idea the significance of it. And
Yeah,
that's something that I've really, I mean, just with the people I know, the people I talk to, like be involved because citizen engagement is everything. And if you're not
yeah,
engaged as a citizen, then you're never going to be engaged as a politician.
yeah. That's really interesting what you said about, if you're not, be engaged as a citizen, you're not going to engage as a politician. I think that's really interesting, put it that way. I think, a lot of people are, trying to, have like big ambition and, big dreams.
Right,
And
and
I think,
that's
yeah,
another thing. That's why I told you when I was running for this position, the last thing on my mind was age. And now it sort of seems to be, I don't want to be say this in a negative manner at all, but it sort of seems like it's becoming more of a trend than anything else at
yeah,
this point. And you cannot, if that's your intention with it, then get out while you're ahead. Because it's wrong, honestly, to have that sort of mindset because these are people's lives that you're messing with. And it's not something to just boost your resume up. Like if you don't have a heart for it, then you don't need to be in it because there are some days that it will make you question yourself up and down. I mean, there's been times I've been like, am I a bad person? Just because, I made a decision that, maybe 85% of people liked, but there's still that 15% that have a problem with it. And then
yeah,
it makes you think about yourself. So if you're not in it 100%, it is so not worth it.
yeah. I think it just kind of goes back to, what people, what it means to be in office, what it means, to like be a politician. Like, I think it kind of all goes back to that. Like, I think if you're not like, I think if you don't really have your, your order of loves and order of like,
Now, I
people
feel
that
like
like,
for all age politicians, if your heart's
yeah,
not in it, you're just up there for a title and a power trip, you need to be unseated.
yeah, yeah. I think it's really, really important. It's kind of like, honestly, when I heard that, I think it's really, really important. Just sit back and think. Like what you pursue, what like when you pursue something, like what are you doing it for? I think it's just really, really important.
Is
Check
your
your
why?
motives.
Like
Yeah,
your why for it. And if your why isn't that you care about others before yourself, then you probably shouldn't do it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, and we definitely talked about this, and but to be more direct, what do you think Gen Z gets right and wrong about politics, leadership, and or civic life today?
I don't really have an answer for that because I think I've said all the things that we do wrong. And to this point, I haven't seen anything that we do right. I will say the more that we try to sort of monetize on like the social media aspect of politics, the further we get away from the true purpose of it. I feel like
Yeah,
that day to day, that knocking on doors, that just communication, that sitting in front of each other, actually communicating versus just blasting something on social media. Like I wish we could stop doing that so much and sort of get back to the root of it all. Not that social media is bad at all. I think it's great for its purpose, but I feel like we live in such a digitalized world till even like
oh, for sure.
the day to day, like the personalities, everything just sort of gets lost in the middle of
Yeah, yeah. No, I
who
totally
you
agree.
are, they know who you allow them to see. And I feel like especially in a public role, people should see you for exactly what you are.
Yeah, 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 for sure. I always, say, I kind of wish I was born, 20 years earlier because like, being a teenager growing up in the 2000s, I think that would have been good because it was kind of like the transition between, like the 80s and like now because like it was definitely so digitized, but people like, would actually like still get out and like, hang out. I think that's, I think that was like kind of like in some ways, like the golden area, like where
Yeah.
like people were like actually like do stuff, but also like not be so like, online.
Yeah. And like anything pre 2016 was great for me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I was like seven and eight, 20 2016. So like I didn't really experience that, but I think really
Yeah.
growing up in the 2000s would have been really, really, good. Would probably would have been better because like everything wasn't so
We had
digitized.
Vine back then, and that was
Oh yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. I've heard about Vine. Yeah, yeah. So. Uh, kind of going off of like your like your 2.5 years of being mayor. I would say what's been like I guess the best moment for you? Like what's like been the best moment, most I guess meaningful thing you've done as mayor?
I would just say that it's anything that I've done, but I would say it's seeing me and my council's ability to work together for things that us and other members in the community I want to see happen. And then seeing those, whether it's a project getting completed or, our police department doing well, just seeing the things that we've invested in prospering, it makes me so happy. We just installed a brand new playground, and seeing little kids running and playing on the playground makes me so happy.
Yeah.
It's just those little gratifying things that mean the most to me.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, I think it's really that sounds really really wholesome, like having doing these things for like little kids. I think it's really great. Yeah. So going off of like what you've been doing as mayor of Arabi, and just what I guess kind of overall that, like what values kind of like guide how you make decisions and lead your community, service, integrity, faith, responsibility, community, etc. We talked about this a little bit, just through like I guess who you are and like what you think about our generation. So yeah.
I just try to, think of the golden rule and do unto others as I would want them to do unto me. And I mean, I think
Yeah.
about with every decision I make, like whether it's how I talk to my employees or how I talk to a citizen, I kind of flip the coin and say, okay, how would I want to be treated if I was in this situation right now? Because I tell my husband this all the time. I'm like, confrontation doesn't have to be confrontation. It can just be a conversation. And it's all in the way
Mm,
you go about it and the way that you choose to, address the situation. And I think that really just being able to take that step back, and especially, like I said, leaning on your faith and knowing that, if Jesus was the most perfect person in the world, for me, I believe in Jesus. And if he was the most perfect person in the world, but he looked at himself as the lowest, then who do you or I or anybody else think we are to ever put ourselves above another person? And
yeah, yeah, for sure.
it's really easy to kind of keep your why, even in situations where you kind of question it, if you have that mentality behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I really, for sure definitely agree with that. It was definitely a really interesting thing, the Bible, teaches that, Jesus was like, like he was like a lowly, the servant. And, I think it's really, I guess it is really, just thinking, as just for me personally, like, if I, just personally, as I'm, going out, just talking to people, like not viewing as myself, as like, more than someone, and then, just remembering that, Jesus was was like a servant like lowly himself. So like why should I expect to be able to be prideful and all that. Like I think that's really good.
I completely agree.
Yep. Yeah. So so about you're more on your time on being mayor. Like what has been the hardest part of becoming mayor so far, and what has it taught you?
I think the hardest part is just learning to recognize that you're, when you go into a meeting, you better leave your personal relationship with that person at the door and be able to differentiate between those personal and professional relationships, especially growing up in a community like mine and growing up, being close to everybody and having good relationships. When you get into these positions, especially these rooms where you may disagree totally with them on something, and but being able to
Hmm.
walk through the doors and come back out and go eat dinner together, or just kind of pushing it aside, because it can be, especially with our generation, I feel like, where we want to be so emotional about everything. You've got to really just like walk out, swallow it, get over it, and move on.
Yeah.
Because if you spend so much time harping on, being mad, then you're spending time that you could be getting something done and just moving on with.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like I think it's that I think kind of going back to what we've been saying about, yeah, feeling about something, but like but like that's just not enough. You
Our
gotta act.
generation is taught like, oh, express your feelings, tell people how you feel. Well,
Yes, exactly.
not necessarily true to the point, like, if you have a problem with somebody, you don't have to tell that person, hey, I have a problem with you. You can just get over it, go about your business, and act like an adult. I feel like
Exactly.
even in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, especially in politics, have a very hard time being an adult and just keeping their mouth shut. And we
Yeah,
could
for
all
sure.
go a lot further if we would just keep our mouths shut.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's just thinking about it like, like just glossing over like personal like, dilemma, like, personal like, like beef with people. I think it's definitely like ultimately like a waste of time because you could be doing something productive instead of, waste
Exactly. You
instead of that.
figure
Yeah.
out a way how to work with that person and still, know that you may disagree on two or three points, but that doesn't mean that you don't like that person. That doesn't mean that y'all can't work together to come up with something that works good for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, you've talked we've talked about a lot about our generation and how it's not the best not the best generations for getting out and being active, but to kind of like the other side about it, what gives you I guess hope about the future of younger generation and the future of communities in America?
Seeing people like myself and you and some others that do choose to be engaged and do choose to spread awareness about it and care about it, and hopefully that will push the rest of our generation into changing their mindset towards it and being more involved. And I truly hope that it wears off on more people, and again, not just our generation. I mean, there's a apathy for voting in multiple generations, and it's just sorriness in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I think it's definitely I'm really glad I can come out and like really like like talk to people and kind of like learn about more about like the world and like how everything works. And I think it's really I'm really glad I'm doing that. And I think it's I'm really glad young people like you who are like actually like doing stuff and like choosing to like serve at a young age. And I think just this is ultimately taught me more about service and the importance of like putting others above you and like of like not being able and being able to like be humble and be a servant leader. I've really been learning the importance of that. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. So to to kind of close this off, we talked a lot about like how Gen Z is in like politics and like how they approach the world and they view the world. So like you know um. Do you think we, I guess, young people are aware of like the political, state of America, I guess like the civic aspect and like in the world and like, are we aware, I guess, a lot's affecting us, why or why not? And like if you could tell one thing if you tell like adults, other older people, one thing about our youth of politics, I guess what would it be? And I guess how would you encourage young people to get involved in civic engagement and improve their communities?
So I guess it would go back to sort of what we've already said. If you see something that you don't like, make the effort to change it. And I guess something positive that I could say about our generation is that if they would choose to pick up that mantle and to try to make a difference, I believe that we could be the most effective of any other generation just due to we have been told, if you want to do something, you can do it. Like, I feel like there's no hesitancy as far as any of that goes in our brain. It's just what we focus on and what we choose to do. So if we could really get up, pick up that mantle and decide like, hey, I care about my town, I care about my state, I care about my country, whatever level it is, and just do it, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop you. And it goes back to that saying, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Don't be worried about your age. Don't even think about your age. Just think about you and your ability to do something that you believe you can do and just prove that you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, really important, for, people to like not to like really just get out because like 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 I'm saying, government is about the consent of the people to govern. I think it's really important, just getting out and doing stuff. So yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
maybe we'll see where the world is in 10 years from now.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Brooke. I really, really appreciated getting to know you and talking to you. I'm really, really grateful that we had this conversation. And yeah, so yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. I know you're probably doing a lot, as mayor, but I'm really thankful I got the chance to talk to you. But yeah,
Yeah, it was great talking to you too. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on what you're doing and keep doing it. Because I mean, you starting out how you are now, I can't wait to see where you are a few years from now.
yep, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, guys. I really appreciate you watching in and tuning in. Please check out more of our episodes, and yeah, I will see you next episode. Bye.